G'day guys, welcome to this part 2 of the breakdown of the Chaos Space Marine changes from the balanced data slate. So in this we're going to talk about writing a list. Jeremy and I are going to sit down and we're going to write the list live in front of you, and you'll be able to watch exactly the thought processes that we go through, how we weigh up certain units against each other. It's a really interesting little conversation and it'll give you a bit of an insight on how we go about writing lists, how we make those considerations. If you're watching this early, thank you very much for joining the Patreon and getting early access to my videos. If you want to join, you can join for as low as $10 a month, and that gets you early access to videos like this. However, if you're watching this, later when it's become publicly available, welcome, and I hope you enjoy the video.
Look for the blood god.
Alrighty, welcome to part 2, Patreon exclusive. We're going to be writing Jeremy's list for RatCon. For those who didn't see, we put a video out a couple days ago with a conversation about Chaos Space Marines in the new meta, with the new balanced data slate, all that sort of stuff. And this is part 2 where we're going to be continuing on and writing a list together. So
we're going 100% fresh, so deleting everything previously.
Yep. So this will be really interesting for those who, because I get a lot of questions, people asking me, how do you go about writing a list? Like, where do you start, So we're just going to, basically, we're not even going to pretend, we're going to pretend you're not there. We're just going to have our conversation, write our list, but hopefully you get some value out of it. So, Strike Force, Slaves to Darkness.
And obviously, if you guys like this, if you enjoy this style of, we can do this for other armies and other stuff like that.
Yep. Do a similar thing for the world leaders for my list, so... All right, so...
Okay, so...
Talk us through, where do you start? Where do you want to start?
Well, I think we start with a battered, because I want a battered in the Termies. I think that okay, so my logic is if the Chaos list can't function without a battered in the Termies, we shouldn't be running Chaos. That's the logic. Like, if a battered in the Termies is not good enough to run, and we're running like Chosen jumping on Rhinos, we're running that kind of list, I think other armies will do that better. I think Orcs.
I agree with that.
I think armies like even Marines.
Yeah, a lot of people criticized me for this when I was doing the World Leaders because I was running, Angron specifically with, the reroll, blessings roll, and all that sort of stuff. And I'm like, no. If I wanted to run something that's just, a whole bunch of vehicles, I'd run Chaos Knights.
Yeah.
If I wanted to run something that was a whole bunch of like elite infantry, I'd run Custodes. You got to start by finding what the unique identity of your faction is, put that in, and then figure out how to best optimize that. Or just choose a different faction.
Yeah.
So I think you're right. If the faction identity here, the thing that is unique about CSM that nobody else can do is the Abaddon and Determinator unit, then you start.
It also adds a lot of like skill expression to how you use a Abaddon and the Terminator unit. Like when you resurrect models, when you advance, shoot, and charge. When you not dark obscuration. Sometimes they just assume you're going to do it all the time, so they go, "Oh, well, I know you're going to Nurgle strat, so I'm not even going to bother trying to to shoot you.
I'm going to shoot you with something insignificant so that you have to waste."
And
your
then
CP,
they set up,
and then you don't do it.
But then you just don't do it. You're like, oh.
And then they killed one Terminator, and you're like, okay, cool. Now, next time you shoot me, I'm going to dark obscure.
And also, you want to sometimes if they can only kill 2 Terminators, you want them to kill 2 so that you can resurrect 1 and it can gain movement. So unless they're going to kill like 3, 4. Or more, it's actually often not worth them killing any.
Yeah.
Because killing 2 or 3, but you res 1 and heal. So if they, for example, kill, let's be generous. Let's be generous. Let's say they kill 3 and wound 1, and they would be like, oh, that's pretty good. You're like, okay, well, the one that's wounded's healed, D3, heals up. Then we're going to resurrect. So you've only killed 2 now, but I gained 2-inch coherency and the base, which is almost 2 inches.
Yeah.
So I've gained.
And then I'm going to advance and charge from that position. Yeah. And I'm also a huge advocate for a lot of people, when a data slate or something comes, they literally throw everything out and start again. I don't necessarily agree with that as an approach. I think what you want to do is you want to take an element of your existing list, the element that you think is still viable, and then rebuild from there. because then you're easing the transition into whatever the new meta eventually looks like.
Yeah.
By making incremental changes, as opposed to just going, no, I'm going to throw it all out and I'm going to run nothing but Warp Talons and Raptors and...
Yeah, so I think we start with a battered.
Yeah.
Whether we add Legionaries or Terminators... yeah, sure. Legionaries or Terminators, I'm not sure. I think it's going to be Terminators.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's at least worth like discussing. The Legionaries have like built-in reroll wounds, which means... is that for me?
Yep.
Yeah, so Legionaries have reroll wounds, so you don't need to pop Eternal Hate. You just, if you go into an objective, you're going to have reroll hits from the Batten's Aura. You're going to have reroll wounds from that, so that's kind of cool. But the problem is, I think they're just too weak. I think then you end up having to overprotect the unit.
Yeah. And they're going to hit, if they're hitting something big, they might not actually do enough damage to actually pop it.
Yeah.
Okay, so Terminators.
So let's do the Turbies. So a battle of the Turbies. Just the normal outfit of Terminators. So we're going to have 8 Power Fists, 2 Chain Fists, 8 Bolters, Combi Bolters, 2
I'll do all that finesse shit later.
Okay, so then the question is...
What's the next nugget you want to put
definitely want, with the changes to the way that Eternal Bravery or whatever, Insane Bravery works.
Yep.
For those that don't know, well, it's you can only do it once per game, and it's only before you take the test.
Yeah.
So it's way worse. And this, to be honest, is such a good change because it actually makes Battle Shock relevant now.
Yeah.
The previous version of the strat, it just was so good that Battle Shock wasn't. So it's the perfect way to change Battle Shock.
Yeah.
So I think we need cultists because we want to sticky objectives, and we also need to have mainly sticky objectives. We just want to sticky objectives as soon as possible.
2?
Let's start with 2. Yeah.
What do you think of the accursed cultists and Dark Commune? Because I think they went down slightly.
Did they? I don't think
they either did or they didn't get changed. Which is kind of buff.
If they got changed, that's actually worth looking at. The Cursed Cultists didn't change. Dark Commune didn't change. So,
but that's kind of good, right? In the way that they were already a really good piece and they didn't get nerfed.
Yeah. We didn't talk about it before. The bikers went down a bit, not enough to make a difference. I don't think.
I don't like bikers.
So I think we go. Yeah, we've got our 2 units.
2 cultists. Abaddon Terminators. Do you want a Rhino with a couple units of Chosen?
We need at least. We want at least 1 Rhinos, and it's going to have either cultists or Chosen in it. I'm also thinking we probably want a Land Raider.
Okay.
Because I think the Land Raider with a Baton, like the backfield shooting from the Land Raider, the fact that you can redeploy a Baton as well using Huron, which we're going to put Huron in.
Yep.
So if we can redeploy a Baton before the game, it means we can set it up in a spot that if we go first, a Baton can deploy aggressively, move into a staging area, and the Rhino, the Land Raider can move up, keep up.
Yep.
Or if we go second, then a Baton can hide and the Land Raider can be where it was, but then it can pop the Nurgle strat.
Yeah.
So a Land Raider, I think, is a really good firing base.
I don't think you can redeploy into transports.
No. You can redeploy to strat reserves. I don't think you can redeploy to transports. Because you need to declare that when you in the pre. I don't think you can do that.
All right, so we got the Land Raider and a Rhino, which means you now can have 2 units of 10 or 4 units of 5 within those transports.
Yep. So I think at least one cultist unit's going to just deploy onto the board. I kind of like the one thing you can do is kind of I like the idea of having a cultist unit in a transport, a Rhino, whatever.
Yeah.
It yeets out, advances out onto an objective to plan a sticky for the next turn.
Yeah, and then you Chosen jump.
And then you move the Rhino.
Yeah.
So I kind of feel like we can have more units using the transports than we have transports.
Yeah.
So we want at least 1 Chosen unit. Maybe 2.
So I played a game. It was back in 9th edition against Stewie Trainer with his Grey Knights, and he had basically 1 Rhino sitting behind a ruin where it couldn't be seen, and a whole bunch of the interceptors or whatever they are, the teleporting ones. And every turn he was just disembarking one with an advance and charge, just yeeting advance out and embarking another, and then the next turn you launch out. He was just using it as a trampoline.
That's all. That was really effective, and that's still good at doing that.
Yeah, I think the Chosen work really well for that because they can embark then disembark out their 3 advanced charge.
So then the question is, if we're going to have at least one chosen unit,
Do you want to go
5-man, 10-man,
5-man, 10-man?
and then do we want Huron? We're definitely taking Huron, but one argument is to just take Huron in Legionaries.
Yeah.
The problem with that, though, I think the whole idea of Huron and Legionaries is worse now, given the fact that the way Battle Shock works. Because you can just be they can just threaten a Battle Shock on you.
Yeah.
And if you're holding an objective and you need to play it, it makes Cultists, I think, a bit better because they've already stickied the objective.
Yeah.
So I kind of feel like 2 units of Cultists and then Huron in Chosen might be better.
And I mean, Huron and Chosen, it gives Huron advance and charge, which is interesting.
Yeah.
And those Chosen are the ones that are going to be out trying to contest objectives, trying to fight on the objectives.
Yeah.
So that actually puts Huron in the thick of it. Whereas Huron and a unit of Legionaries isn't doing any significant damage, which means it's not likely to be in the fight on an objective.
Yeah.
So I think you're right. I think he goes with the Chosen.
5, and I think just 5.
So we've currently got 5 Chosen with Huron.
Yep.
Now do you want to do another 5 Chosen
I reckon
with
we go 10 with
Fabius?
Fabius.
Yeah, I like that.
Because I think Fabius and 10 becomes this really interesting unit that you can have in the Land Raider. You can have them in the Land Raider. And now the Land Raider becomes really scary because you have this big unit of Chosen that can advance out, charge.
Yeah.
It forces that to be dealt with. You theoretically can ingress them. You can just put them in. You could use Huron's ability to put them in reserve. So you could, I
like the idea of Huron and the Cultists as well, because you can deploy them real far on the edge so that they could, in their first turn, they could just advance out onto that objective. But if your opponent goes first, you just go, cool, I'm just going to pull them back.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think 10 Chosen, 5 Chosen, Huron, and Fabius is good.
Yep.
Now, I think 3 characters now, we're approaching probably as many characters as we want.
I think you don't want to go more than 3 unless they're characters that are integral to damage. Like you won't be able to do damage without them. Then you go, okay, well let's add a 4th. But unless they have like lone ops or something like that. Do you still run the Changeling? I kind of still like the Changeling.
Yeah. I don't think we need him as much.
You want to maybe leave him out for now and see
He's
how
still
the list
really
pans.
good. Yeah, we might leave him.
And Scribes is still good, right? Scribes didn't change, didn't go up.
Yeah, but I think but I agree. But I do feel like the problem is now that we have 3 other characters, if we start piling on characters, we really do make
Assassinate
a viable choice.
Yeah. And I don't think we want.
Because we're going to be a lot of these characters are a lot of these characters are going to die. They're going to go out and want to die.
Yeah.
So let's.
All right. So you're currently at 1620, and that's Abaddon, Fabius, Huron, 2x10 cultists.
Yeah.
A Rhino, a Land Raider, Terminators, 2x5. A 10 and a 5 Chosen. Do we want to look at some Warp Talons?
I think so. The only issue with Warp Talons is just that we already have 2 scrapping combat units. If we go with them, and we also have got to consider whether we want Raptors, maybe we just take a unit of 5 Warp Talons that can either be run out onto objectives.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on taking that 5-man Chosen, right?
Yep.
Oh no, that one. I was going to say bumping it to a 10, putting in a Master of Executions, and then you've got a unit that can actually just go out and kill a knight.
Which one's this?
If you go 10...
On the 5 Chosen.
If you go the 10 Chosen with the Master of Executions in it, make it Mark of Khorne.
But that wouldn't be able to have Huron in it now.
No, that's what I just realised as I started saying it. But maybe you go
I don't think we can do it. I don't think because I think the one, if we think about what we've got now, we've got like some Dakar. We've got the Land Raider. Oh, we don't have Obliterators yet.
No.
We probably should consider putting 4 Blitz in.
Okay, I'll chuck those in and we'll see how it fits.
I think that's almost the whole list.
It feels, the Obliterators feel
Expensive.
really expensive now.
Well, the Land Raider's only, 245?
Yeah, and these are 340. These are it's 100 points more than a Land Raider. Land Raider's 240, they're 340.
So how many points do we have if we put them in? Are we done? We're almost
You've
full?
got 40 points left.
Yeah. Yeah, like we said before in the previous thing that we probably still want a unit. But the reason why we like a unit is because they drop near Abaddon.
Yeah.
They get the
I
Abaddon
think we
aura.
need... So, we've got Abaddon, and one of his biggest strengths is the 6-inch aura of rerolls. You don't want to go, cool, he's just with the Terminators giving them rerolls, because they already have rerolls, right? So, you want something else that can go near Abaddon to get utility
and
from
he
them.
gives the best use to things with Nurgle. Things that have the... So, obviously the Land Raider with the mark of Nurgle like really works well.
Is Fabius undivided?
Yeah. Or is he... Yeah, I think
not Slaanesh.
he's undivided.
Keywords. Yeah, undivided.
Yeah. I like Fabius with the chose. I like him with 10. You could put him with 5. Like, does it need to be 10? 10 makes it a lot like scarier because he goes out. The buff you give to toughness and strength is better. I think you do stick with 10.
I feel like you don't add a character to a unit that is a buffing character unless you're going to max out the unit.
Yeah.
Same reason that we have Abaddon in the Terminators and we've maxed out the Terminators. It's the same logic.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
You don't want to... But you got 40 points left to spend. You could use that to swap one of the units of cultists out for Raptors.
Yeah. Well, I think we need to talk about like whether we actually want
A blitz.
Yeah, do we actually want a blitz?
340 points. For the same points, you could get...
Like the problem,
almost get 3 Predators.
The problem with the blitz, like this is the thing, right? So the Obliterators were already so swingy in that sometimes
they were a bit iffy.
Sometimes they just are so good. Other times they just do nothing because you're rolling D3 shots. You're like, okay, 4 D3 shots, and you instead of getting your average 8, you get 4 or 5. You might get like 5 shots. And then you're re-rolling with your Nurgle, and you don't really explode much. You get 5 hits, and then you get 3 wounds, and your opponent passes 2 saves, and you're like, "Cool, I just did nothing."
And people will push back on that, and they do to me often. They say, "Yeah, but that could happen to any unit." And it's like, well, that's not necessarily true because if instead of that 340 investing in this one nugget, if you went, "Cool, I'm going to take that 340 points and I'm going to put in 3 units of 5 Warp Talons," well, now you're distributing that, and then if one of them whiffs, it's not that big of a deal because you're not likely to whiff on all 3.
Yep.
So, and if they whiff, it's not that consequential because you've got other pieces around. Whereas if the Obliterators whiff, it's like all eggs in one basket. You're in trouble now.
Yep.
So maybe it's not Obliterators.
Yeah, like it would feel weird though losing Obliterators.
Yeah, I feel like if you do lose the Obliterators, you now have relatively limited capacity.
We need to replace them with shooting.
Things. Yeah.
We would need to replace them with... And that's why the Land Raider is kind of good, because you look at the Land Raider and you kind of go, well, it shoots 4 las cannon shots, it shoots...
And they're not just regular las cannons either, they're stronger.
Strength 12 las cannons. Yeah. I think all las cannons strength 12?
No, they're I think it's the D6 plus 1 damage that they get that other las cannons don't.
I think they are like normal las cannons. They just have 2 shots each, so it's like 4 shots.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know, but you definitely get 4 shots. So it's like 4 shots that. It's interesting. 4 shots that you're re-rolling hits if you're close to a baton down the field. You get some heavy bolter shots as well. You're putting a unit into it. Like we only have 1 Rhino in the list, right?
Currently, yes.
Yeah. So 1 Rhino, 1 Land Raider. So it's like an upgrade for a Rhino. Because if we didn't have that, we'd probably need a 2nd Rhino.
Yeah.
So it actually is what you said before. Like we're saving 70 points, 75 points. So it's basically 165 points for the tank. And it's like an old Forge Fiend. It's like the price of an old Rhino plus a Forge Fiend. And while this shooting isn't necessarily as explosive as a Forge Fiend, it's coming from a longer range, tougher.
Yeah. And you can view it as now you can use the Dark Obscuration strat to protect your Rhino and your Forge Fiend. Because they're the one thing now.
Right. And that's what you'd often do. You often would pop it on the Forge Fiend turn 1. Because it would be deployed near a baton. And then you come out and your baton's hidden. So it's okay.
And this way you deploy your single Rhino out of line of sight in a little nugget somewhere to be a platform. And then you've got your Land Raider, which can be deployed in the open because it just won't get targeted.
Yeah, I feel like the problem with the obliterators is they're going to come down. They can come down like hide. We could make them undivided. They come down, hide, do their indirect straight away, and they're hidden.
Yeah.
The concern is just that they're so easy to kill. They're so, for their price, especially now that they've gone up in price, for 340 points, they're easier to kill than the Land Raider. Like they'll die often easier than the T7 instead of Land Raider's T12.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that they're 4 bodies, but once you lose 2 of them, it's like, unless there's each, if you lose 2 of them, the unit just sucks.
Yeah.
They're slow.
They punch are okay.
Yeah. I just feel like they got hit hard. They got hit over several
If it puts it in context, they're 340 points. Your Terminator's 390 points. And that Terminator unit is... I mean,
Seems
obviously,
better.
it's activated by Abaddon, but it's still way the fuck better.
Yeah. Okay, well, I think if you look at what we've got the big unit of chosen in the Land Raider, which is really nice.
Yep. Then you've got Huron and another unit sitting behind the Rhino, and then you've got 10 cultists in the Rhino, and the 10 cultists launch out, and then these guys jump in.
We need some screen. We
out.
do need some screens and objective play. We don't have many screens.
You don't have the same little lone ops, little dorks. Like the game you were talking about with the tower, where you're like, oh, he's going to rapid ingress, and then he's going to fuck my Terminators. It's like, he's in this list, he's going to fuck your Terminators.
Yeah, so we need either some Raptors, like Blue Scribes type of unit.
If
Raptors.
you dropped the Blitz, you could probably get 3 units of 5 Talons and the Blue Scribes.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Or 1 unit of 5 and 1 unit of 10 Talons and the Blue Scribes.
I don't know about the 10 Talons. I think if we're going to go with 10 Talons...
Because this list is currently not abusing rapid ingress.
Yeah.
And I think rapid ingress is one of the most fucked things.
Well, it's not... you know what I think, though? I know that we haven't said it yet, but I'm thinking the Huron and 5 unit will go into reserves a lot. It's going to rapid ingress.
Okay.
Because it deploys on the board.
Well, in that case, you want another unit that can take advantage of the Rhino, or you want to get rid of the Rhino.
I think the Rhino is just good, though, for its price.
Yeah, I agree.
Because you can put each unit of cult, one unit of cultists is at home, the other unit of cultists starts in the Rhino, it advances out of the Rhino onto an objective.
The other unit, after having stickied your home, jumps
or
in.
just the Rhino goes away and it's its own unit now. It's a little 75. I think the Rhino's fine. And I think Huron's unit probably goes into reserves. And it threatens a rapid ingress. Because it hits hard enough to... it hits hard enough to hurt to threaten backfields, especially because it has OC2 on the Chosen, right?
Huron goes in with 10 attacks, hitting on 2s.
Yeah, he's good.
What a slut.
And they're going to be undivided, so they can Eternal Hate. They can actually put out solid damage.
Well, do you increase the size of his squad, perhaps? If you're rapid ingressing it?
I think we need 2... I'm thinking right now we need 2 things. We need at least 1 other shooting platform.
Is this with the Obliterators gone?
Yes.
Are you factoring in this?
Yes. Yep. Obliterator's gone. We need... Now, one option could be 2 Obliterators.
Yeah.
The reason being that it's still a shooting unit. It's just cheaper. It's just less eggs in one basket.
Yeah. You could do a Vindicator.
I'm thinking of Vindicator. Another option is a Forge Feed. We talked about it before. A Forge Feed.
Yeah.
That just goes in strat reserves. It's going to come on. It's going to get 1 volley at least.
Well, you've currently got 380 points. Which, if you put a Forge Fiend, that leaves you with 210.
Yeah.
You could do a Forge Fiend and a Vindicator.
Yeah, I'm just thinking...
Wow, that's the same points as an Obliterator squad.
Yeah, I think Obliterator squads, I think they're priced out a bit now.
Yeah. I think the big deal for them is losing the indirect Overwatch. I think that...
Do we like the idea of the 5 Noise Marines in, giving assault to the Rhino and shooting stuff out of the Rhino? Or is that...
I think we would want to, before submitting, you'd want to check that definitely works. Firing deck definitely works that way.
If you're eligible to shoot, a unit that is eligible to shoot. It is eligible to shoot.
Some transport models have firing deck lists in their ability. Each time such a model is selected to shoot in the shooting phase, you can select up to X models embarked within it. Then for each of those embarked models, you can select one range weapon that the embarked model is equipped with. Until that transport model has resolved all of its attacks, it counts as being equipped with all of the weapons selected in this way. So yes, it works.
Because it counts as having the weapon.
It counts as having the assault
And then
weapon.
at that point, you do the action.
Yeah.
It's at any time in
So,
the shooting
yeah.
phase. You're like, well, this model has this.
Yeah. It does work.
It's not bad.
It's good. Is it potentially more cute?
Well,
than
but it's also like an 85 point cheap unit. Like if we're talking about cheap throwaway units, like
Yeah.
we've already kind of said we've got an extra spot in a vehicle.
And you can fit, because you only get one Blastmaster, but you've got a firing deck of 2. You could put 2 units of 5 in, and now you'd be able to shoot out 2 Blastmasters on the turns that you're not.
It's also got a Doom Siren it can shoot out, but that's short range.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's interesting that the idea of 2 units in there, because then you kind of just jump them in and out, and they can just do actions. They can advance out and do actions. Like they can advance out of the Rhino and go, okay, I'm cleansing this with this 85 point unit.
Yeah.
And like now, a Raptor unit's like the same price is 90 points. They can advance and do actions the Raptors can't.
They can go inside the Rhino, so that they're harder to deal with.
They shoot better. Like, and as you said, there's that turn that you're getting 2 Blastmasters. I think they're 3 shots each, aren't they?
Yeah, something.
Like 3 shots, strength 8 or 9, AP 3. Like they're actually AP 2-3 damage. Like they're actually good.
Yeah, they're
good
good
profile.
Wait, yeah, and they would get, if it's Nurgle Rhino, they would get the sustained
So
hits
if that
for being
one
Nurgle,
Rhino
'cause
goes
it's the
near a
Rhino
battle, it's
shooting.
going to be 6 shots with sustained hits.
That's fucked.
Yeah.
That's fucked, man. What are you talking about? That's in. Surely that's in.
But well, the question is whether you go 1 units or 2 units.
And they're heavy, so they're getting...
If it remains stationary. No, but it wouldn't count. Oh no, it does count because the Rhino would
they
get
have that gun. The Rhino counts as having that gun. So you could embark into the Rhino, but the Rhino hasn't moved, so now you get that heavy benefit.
Yeah. If it stays still, yeah. Yep. So what's the profile?
Strength 9, so it's 3 shots, hitting on 4s, but heavy,
Yeah.
right? Strength 9, AP 2, 3 damage.
But it wouldn't be hitting on 4s because... Oh no, it hits on 4s even when it goes in the Rhino because it's shooting the gun.
Yeah.
Okay, hits on 4s, AP 2, 3 damage.
Yeah.
It's pretty good, man. Like if you combo that with the Land Raider shooting, and then that's getting some shots in.
And what you probably do is you probably deploy like Land Raider, Rhino behind you, in some situations, Rhino behind. And then what you can do is you can move the Land Raider out of the way so that the Rhino can shoot. The Rhino doesn't need to move, and now you're getting that heavy benefit, and the Land Raider's shooing, and Abaddon's in there giving it all rerolls.
Yeah.
That's actually a pretty fucking scary fire base.
Well, it's kind of doing a few things because it's empowering the... So you could, for example, start the Rhino with cultists in it,
Yeah.
right? Then you have the 2 units out of line of sight. Turn 1, you disembark the cultists to screen,
Yep.
and then you embark in the Noise Marines,
Yep.
and then shoot with the Noise Marines
Yeah.
out of the Rhino. And as you said, the Rhino might not have moved.
And the Land Raider is blocking the line of sight to the Rhino, and then the Land Raider is using the Nurgle strat. So they can't shoot the Land Raider, they can't shoot the Rhino.
Well, they
can't
might be
shoot-
able to draw, but it really depends on how you set it up. But essentially, you're turning a 75-point Rhino into shooting like respectable, like 6 3 damage shots with exploding 5s full rerolls.
Yeah.
For the whole package is not even that expensive. It's 75 plus 170.
And really, the Rhino, in order to get it shooting, you could have the Rhino mostly hidden behind a wall, but part of it's hanging out, and then the Land Raider covers just the part that's hanging out.
Yeah.
And now they're not shooting that fucking Rhino.
Yeah.
And then when the Land Raider moves, now the Rhino can shoot out without having to move.
And the Noise Marines just give you like good like mission play afterwards.
Yes, and there'll be some games where you won't do that strategy. There's some games where you'll be like, cool, the Noise Marines are actually going to be going out to doing things.
Yeah, I like it. I think that's cool. It's like all comes together. And the fact that just 1 unit of 5 Noise Marines in the Rhino let the Rhino advance and do actions. It's like that Rhino could just jump out and cleanse turn 1. And you're like, oh, that's actually really nice.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's do that.
All right. So where we're at now.
So all we've done, and then what's really cool is all we've done to enable that is just add 2 noise marine units in. We already had the Rhino.
Yeah. So we've got Abaddon, Fabius, Huron, Cultists, Rhino, Land Raider, Terminators, 10 Chosen, which will go with Fabius in the Land Raider.
Yep.
5 Chosen, which will go with Huron in Strat Reserves.
Probably Strat Reserves.
And then 2 units of 5 Noise Marines.
And how many points is that?
And you've still got 210.
That feels better already than...
That feels better than the Obliterators. It's probably not, because the Obliterators do a lot.
No, but the Obliterators do a lot, but it's so
having those
swingy.
Like, you could add the Vindicator in here. You could add...
You can add Cypher. It's interesting because Cypher does the same...
Cypher?
Yeah, but Cypher does the same thing, just so everyone knows. Like, he has an assault weapon as well. So if he goes into a Rhino, just him. Probably not worth 105 points.
No.
And Vec's a lot worse now, right?
Vec's so much worse now. Only being able to Vect battle, like... So Vect was really good because if you went up and against the other CSN, that was a huge advantage in the mirror match. Now it actually almost means nothing
Cypher's not
in the
worth
mirror
points
match.
anymore. Okay. Do we just take a Forge Feed because it's good, like, against Grey Knights? It's good against...
Probably, yeah.
Like, because okay, now we have to kind of think about the meta. Like, can we deal with 20 Necron Warriors? A Battle's unit can kill 20 Necron Warriors.
Yep.
Can that Chosen unit and Fabius kill? No, probably not.
Probably not. No. But if you soften them up, and so Forge Fiend can't now. Can't rely on
No,
it.
Forge Feed does nothing.
But because I think Necrons are going to be a big thing in the meta. I think we can expect to see, because every cunt and his mum has 100 Necron warriors. Because of
His mum definitely does.
His mum definitely does.
His mum
There's
does.
like 200 of them on the shelf right
Yeah.
there. Like everyone fucking has them. So I think, you know, whether or not they'll have them for RatCon is another question. Whether or not people will recognize.
No, it's
but I think
easy. Everyone has Warriors. As you said, like...
No, like as in whether or not people recognize. By
They do.
RatCon.
No, they do. Especially in Australia. Like, we all know about Liam Hackett's Oz list, so...
And it almost got no nerfs, so...
Yeah. Like, it's still hard to use. Like, it's not easy to use. Liam was using it expertly.
Yes. And I was watching a lot of his games, and I was watching what he was doing, and I was like, if he makes one slip up at any point, he's fucked.
And but
he just didn't slip up.
People are going to, you know, if you're playing someone that's using like every little inch of, or inch is the wrong way, like every little, squeezing every amount
of utility.
But they're doing it in a really toxic way. Well, you're going to then put them on a clock and say, okay, you have to do this perfectly, because I'm not just going to let you, I'm not going to let you do this perfectly with unlimited time. You're going to be using your clock.
Yeah.
Like, if you run out of time and you clock out because you're trying to do this properly, that's your problem.
Yeah. Yeah, you choose a complex... You know,
And bear in mind, like, WTC 4-hour rounds, RatCon's probably not even 3-hour rounds.
Yeah.
By the time you set up and stuff, you probably end up with like an hour and 15 minutes on your clock. Playing 5 turns, trying to do this, it's actually hard.
yes.
But Forge doesn't...
fair, Necrons don't really have a combat or shooting phase. It's all just about movement and reanimation.
True.
But you're relying on that, relies on them budgeting their time, and people.
But the reality
people
is,
suck at
the
budgeting.
Terminator unit, Abaddon's unit, when he goes to the Talon of Horus, with all those power fists, actually, I think, have a good chance of getting through the unit.
Yeah, I agree. So maybe Necrons aren't that big of a bully man for this list, right?
Yeah.
Grey Knights, I think, are going to be prevalent and strong now that they've got reasonable points costs and they've still got all of their jank. None of their jank got taken away. So the ability to teleport, the ability to dodge you when you go to charge them, the ability to go in with Drago and just have that reliable charge. But so the Forge Fiend's value there.
It's good in that it comes on and like into a 10-man, it really hurts a 10-man.
We're not gonna, I don't think we're going to see Scarab Occults anymore.
Yeah.
Custodes units went down in
And
size.
it's better against Custodes now because 5-man's like, they're not going to get the FMP on the mortals. So the mortals just kill the... Unless the 5-mans will probably still have a couple of guys with shields. So they just... But that happens at the end though. So they have to decide like how they're going to take... It doesn't matter. It just is good. Still just better against Custodes, basically.
Yeah. Yes.
We'll see more Warden units now, though, because Wardens already could only go to 6 mans.
Yeah.
And Wardens already had FMP, so it's not better against Wardens.
How does it go into something like, say, a 20-man blob of Tyranids? Obviously, a lot of the ability it used to have was the Devastating Wounds spillover, but it's still 3d3
Plus 12.
12, so it's still getting an average of 16 shots.
Tyranids using the new codex? No, not yet.
It's still up in the air. He announced no, but then apparently his inbox exploded with autistic screeching, so now he's considering.
Is it out yet, though?
It comes out today,
Okay.
and list submission is Tuesday.
Okay.
So I said he should use it because fuck it, like people want to play it, let them
Whatever.
play it, right? And the new points costs are clearly factored in for the new codex. So it's like, do you use the new points costs for every other army, but not for Tyranids? That seems
the problem
wrong.
with the Nids, like it kills enough of them, but that doesn't necessarily vape a whole unit because you got to roll to hit, you got to roll to wound. The dev wounds don't really help you at all, so you wouldn't even really overcharge against them.
No.
Um,
So I think what you probably do is you probably just chip into them, kill like 4 or 5, and then use this to finish the unit.
yeah.
So it probably is valuable in that regard. I think the single forge feed is the play.
I think it's probably worth it. If you think about the fact that 3 were literally taking 3 before, they've been nerfed, but not.
They still do something, they just don't do everything. That's the way I look at it. So
And if you have one in strat reserve and you have like two whole turns to decide is it going to be useful from any
yeah,
it's going to very likely at some point be like, I'm glad I had this.
yeah.
So I think you're probably right. I'm just thinking what else is good into the high volume. What else does that well?
Well, what else are you expecting people to run in the meta? I think Elder. I think there will still be some Elder.
And I think there'll
around.
be GK, man. I think that Forge Feed is actually best against. It's good against Nids. Like I agree. Like the fact that it can just not overcharge, so it's not really making itself vulnerable.
It's not self-sacrificing. It's not. It can come on somewhere where it's not super vulnerable and contribute.
And do we make it undivided or Nurgle? I think it's interesting because you go. The obvious answer would be to go undivided.
That would be mine.
But the advantage of being Nurgle is that you can just deploy it on the board if you feel like you're going to want to just expedite the shooting.
Well, it would be matchup dependent.
But you're realistically not going to. You're going to put in reserves.
Yeah. Especially if you're trying to hide a Land Raider and a Rhino and you're not going to have a lot of space.
No. So then we say, okay, in that case, it is good against. I think the best matchup would be GK.
Yeah.
Because the GK players, good players playing GK, then suddenly they have to worry the whole game about where that Forge Fiend comes on and shoots. Because it's going to come on and it's probably going to kill a 5-man.
Yeah.
And 10-man, it might not kill a 10-man, but because of the extra blast, it's going to tax a 10-man heavily.
Yeah. That being said, if we're talking about killing Terminators, right? You've got the Vindicator is an option, right? It's more or less the same points, right? You can fit either one of them. And it's got D6 plus 3 shots.
Blast.
That's strength 14, AP3, D6 damage. I think it probably is still the Forge Fiend. Because I think in the killing Terminators role, the Forge Fiend is just better. This is better at killing Knights and Mech.
Yeah, I think it's the Forge Fiend. And I think against things where the Dev Wounds doesn't matter, you just don't overcharge. So it's like, well, you're not killing yourself. So there's the benefit in that way. So yeah, I think one Forge Fiend. So how many points do we have left?
You got 30 points left.
So we can upgrade a cultist unit to a third unit of Noise Marines.
Yep. That is an option.
That's probably the play. Or we upgrade. What do we have?
So you got 85 points. You could add a what's it called? A Master of Executions. I know we already said that we're kind of at capacity with characters, but you add the Master of Executions into Fabius's unit, right? And now you go, cool, Abaddon Terminators that way. Fabius,
it can
Mo,
go a
Chosen
different
that
way, get reroll hits.
And now it's going in with reroll hits.
But it already has access to Eternal Hate. I know you've got finite CP because it's undivided. It can already do that. It's already rerolling once to hit naturally because of the Dark Pact. So it's probably not as useful if you're already rerolling ones to hit naturally.
Yeah, true. There's probably more of a mark of... He's way more valuable in Mark of Khorne.
I kind of like having the second cultist unit.
There is the Exalted Champion.
What does that do?
He gives you... oh no, it's +1 to the hit roll.
It's not bad though. What else does he do? Is that it?
Well, now you're getting +1 to hit, so you're hitting on 2s, re-rolling 1s.
Yeah. Is that all he does?
He also... when he makes a Dark Pact, he gets +D3 strength to himself.
Okay. What's his weapon?
It's strength 5, AP 2 damage.
Okay.
Nah. You've got... What other options are there? You might have to shuffle some stuff, but you could put Lucius in one of those units of...
Yeah. What does he do?
He's gives them fight first, which is not relevant because they don't fight well. And then he does mortal wounds to things that kill him. So he's kind of rubbish. No, he's rubbish.
I kind of like just upgrading a cultist unit. Like, I know we said the sticky's important, right?
Yeah.
But, like, it's not the be-all and end-all. An 85 point, like, 5 Noise Marines for 85 points are good.
Would you ditch them for a third unit, or would you ditch them to upgrade one of those 2 units into a unit of 10?
Wait, we can't do that.
What do you mean?
Don't we need another 85 points? Oh, yeah,
We're talking
if
you ditch them, you could have 3 units of 5, or you could have a 10 and a 5.
Gotcha. What does the 10-man do?
I'll just double check whether or not a 10-man can take
Second.
the second.
I don't think it does. That's why no one takes the 10-man.
No. That's cringe.
You're right? Is that true?
Correct.
Yeah.
So you don't do that.
Yeah. Like, then you have 3 units of them. Well, what else can you get for 85 points? Okay, here's another... You know how we had the Chosen that we had Huron in?
Yeah.
5 Chosen.
5 Chosen.
We could make that 5 Legionaries, and we gain 20 points? 25 points?
20 points.
So there's 105 for the Chosen.
110 for the Chosen.
Legionaries are 90. Yeah, 20 points.
Yeah.
So 20 points, we'd then have 50 points.
But Huron and Legionaries, I just don't really see it doing a lot.
Yeah. I was just thinking, if it was 55 points and we got another 10 cultists, we'd probably do it, right?
Yeah.
So we probably currently go with the 5 Noise Marines. But we're not gaining really meat because we're just swapping 10 little bodies for 5 better bodies. They're significantly better bodies though. Like they shoot, when they shoot, they cause a battle shock test. We know that's kind of somewhat better now.
Well, that hasn't changed because that's a battle shock test
In their turn.
that you do in your turn to them, and the strat already was not eligible for that.
Yeah.
So that side of battle
But
shock.
you get
hasn't
Overwatch
changed.
though. Force a battle shock. Is it when they? Can you check what it says if it's when they shoot or in your shooting phase? I think it's in your shooting phase.
In your shooting phase.
So Overwatch doesn't work.
And you have to hit them.
Yeah.
So.
But you have the Flamer. You have the Doom Siren.
Oh yeah, true.
Yeah. So guys, anyone that's still watching at this point.
No, I think this is. I think I would watch this.
Yeah. No, but this is like the hard part where you really go, okay, and this is where it's hard with the new points because in the past you just go, oh, let's just add a couple of models in,
Yeah.
Now you're like,
Or you'd be like, cool, let's just drop a couple power fists off that Terminator unit, and now we can fit a whole unit of
Yeah.
cultists in. But
Yeah.
now you're like, well, fuck.
but I kind of really like, I would really like one more unit, even a unit of Nurglings. There's even an argument. Did Nurglings change points?
Nurglings went down. So let's look at some allies. So you got Beasts and Nurgle, blah, 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 blah. Fuck, there's a lot of allied units.
Nurglings were 40 before.
35 now.
Oh, so we're 5 points off a unit of Nurgle. That's annoying. Because we would take a unit. Just a screen, right?
Yeah.
Or what other like cheap units are there?
I'm just thinking you could drop a unit of cultists and get multiple units of Nurglings.
They don't have any OC. That's the problem with them.
They can still do like investigate.
They can still screen. Like they're
There's
still
still bodies on the board. And like once a cultist have sticky in an objective, then it doesn't matter if your Nurglings in your backfield are OC.
Well, we just need 5 points to get a unit. So if we do make the chosen into like, if we make those chosen into legionaries, we gain 20 points.
Yeah.
You don't like that change? You think you're right, it does make them, makes them a lot less killy, but then they're OC3.
Yeah.
So if they hit an objective, they're going to a lot more effectively just steal an objective off someone.
True.
They go in, they get reroll to wound on an objective because they're legionaries.
Yeah, and then you can bring them on with Dakar, like they can have a las cannon in the unit or whatever.
I agree they're better if they're chosen. They're tougher, they're better in combat. Like, it's just better
They
if they're
can advance
chosen.
and charge, which means they can advance and do actions. They
Yeah.
get Huron into combat.
Yeah, just leave them as chosen. So 35, you said. Changeling went up to 90.
What about... I actually don't have anything. Sometimes when I'm writing lists, I just say, like, what about, and hope that just words just come.
I can tell that when I read your lists.
Fuck you.
What about Two Lord of Skulls?
I mean...
Beasts went down. Well, not Beasts. CSM, what are they called?
Spawn.
Spawn went down to what, 70? How much is Spawn?
They're rubbish.
But how many points are they?
70 points. 70 points for two guys that are 4 wounds each with 4-up save.
Did they heal to full though? And then egg 1 damage or something?
They heal deal D3, I think. Yeah, at the start of each player's command phase, one model regains D3. And they got a 5-up for no pain.
That's actually pretty good for 70 points. What's their objective control?
1.
So we have a cultist unit, 55. So we have 30 points. We could make a cultist unit that and have 15 points left.
They do get D6 plus 2 attacks each that are 2 damage.
Yeah.
So they don't do nothing.
To be honest, man, I think you just go to the currently. It's looking like the best play would just be to go to the Noise Marines.
You could get Felgor Beastmen. They have Scout.
Do they change price?
I'm not sure.
I think they're still like 90 or something, 95.
I mean, it doesn't really matter whether or not they went down
It's
or not.
just with the price, right?
Yeah, they're 95 points.
Yeah, nah.
But they get 6-inch Scout, and then they get +2 to their charge rolls. They're able to just go in early and do stuff.
That would be good if they were a bit cheaper. Like if they went down to 85, that'd actually be pretty good.
Yeah.
We'd take them if they were 85 for sure. The question, okay, so at this point you go through all your choices and you decide like
How many points we had? We had 30 left, so
Yeah.
85 points.
So we're thinking of dropping cultists, but we can contemplate dropping something else. Doesn't have to be cultists. Like we could drop one of the Noise Marine units.
Yeah.
We could you know how we had that Rhino where we're going to put the noise marines in? We could have 5. Oh no, but you only get 2 shooting out. I was going to say you could have 5 Havocs, but only 2 can shoot out.
Correct. If you did ditch one of the noise marines, you could then put 1 unit of noise marines and 5 chosen with Huron in the Rhino. And now that Rhino can still advance around, do its actions, pop off with the shooting, use Nurgle to protect all of it, and then launch Huron at some stage from there. And then that frees up 85 points, which gives you 110 points, which is another unit of chosen.
Yeah, because then you're not ingressing him, but he's still in it.
Yeah. Or you could turn 5 noise marines into 5 chosen and then put Huron in a unit of 10. So you get 2 units of 10.
What about this? What about if we put Huron in 5 in 5 I got it.
Fucking well done. Well, you just pissed it off.
If we put here, actually this is good. If we put Huron in 5 legionaries and put them in the Rhino, the legionaries could have a las cannon. So then we can shoot a las cannon and the Blastmaster out of the hatch. So it's still relevant damage out of the hatch.
Correct, yeah.
And then that frees up. That Rhino could still advance into actions because it's still got 1 unit of noise marines in it. So, and we have now saved 85 points, which we can then get the 30 points extra. So
you've saved more than 85 because you got that's dropping the noise marines. And 20. So you use 105.
Plus 135 points now.
Yeah. Which you
that's good.
You could get a Predator. Do you want me to put that in?
Yeah. Well, if we then dropped the cultist unit, it goes to 190 points, we could take a Vindicator.
True. So
we could just go 1 cultist unit.
So we dropped the 5 chosen for 5 legionaries. And we dropped the noise marines.
Yeah.
Right. Which gives us 135 points.
Yep. And if we added another 55 on.
Which if we drop that and then put in a Vindicator.
That would give us a little...
That's 2,000 on the nose.
Yeah, on the board we would have a Vindicator, a Land Raider, and a Rhino.
I like deep striking the Vindicator, personally.
Really? Just bring it on.
You treat it similar to a Forge Fiend. It just comes on somewhere and just goes fucking boom.
Yeah.
And then you're like, cool, it's in cover, it's tough.
I kind of like, though, that with like a Vindicator, a Land Raider that has really long range shooting, right?
Yeah.
And with the Terminators, it can redeploy after you know who goes first. You can set it up in a way that even when you go second, you have vehicles kind of like coming in from different angles to be around a baton because you have a baton ready. You can redeploy to a defensive spot.
Yep.
And then you've got maybe the Land Raider's hit it because it's long range, so it just kind of peeks around the back. And then you might have the Vindicator more close and the Rhino hit it.
Yeah.
So that the Vindicator's visible, but it pops a Nurgle strap.
Yeah.
So then everything kind of comes around the baton. The turn one you're getting the Vindicator and the Land Raider.
I do like the thing. You know, my favorite thing about this list is this is like cancer to the fluff bunnies because you've got Slaneshi Noise Marines inside of a Nurgle Rhino, sharing it with Huron, right?
Yeah. Well,
and then Huron's on the same battlefield as Abaddon, and they're like sworn enemies. They hate each other because they're both competing for control. And not only that, Huron is telling Abaddon, no, not over there, dickhead. Come over here. You're there. I'm here. He's actually the boss.
He actually is. He's redeploying.
He's redeploying Abaddon. Abaddon's like, I'm up front because I'm the fucking War Master. He's like, no, get behind the fucking Land Raider.
Like, does he have to be the Warlord to do that, or is it just...
I fucking hope not, because that's hilarious.
That would be funny. Because you're right. He's doing it because he's the strategic genius.
Does not have to be the Warlord.
No, okay.
That's fucking funny.
Yeah, but the problem with that list now is we've lost one of our we've actually lost a moving part.
The Oblit Anvil.
No,
Or the-
we've lost the 135 points for a cultist unit making the Vindicator. So we lost now we've got the Vindicator, but we've lost a moving part that we kind of wanted.
Yeah.
I still think we're low on screens in this list. So I think we do actually need to drop the Vindicator. I think it's nice.
I think, how about, this is a good starting point, right? So how about, we cut the video here, we'll play it, see how it feels, and then we might review it after the fact. Does that sound good? Because I think you're right, there's a lot of moving parts here that you might need to see them in action to sort of decide, is this enough parts?
And in some ways, something like the Vindicator or the Rhino, they are screens.
Yes.
When we talk about for example, the 5 noise rings being in the Rhino, we're not assuming they're going to be there the whole game.
Yeah, correct.
There's going to be a point where they come out and do something on screen.
Yeah.
So that we don't have to.
A big one is so turn 3, for example, let's say you're going first, and it's turn 3, and you know your opponent still has reserves. You go, cool, I'm going to jump out now. I'm going to act as a screen for just this turn. You now can't do your thing. You're going to have to drop over there, and now I jump back in my turn 4.
Yeah.
So they only need to be able, you need to have enough tools to screen when you need to screen, but you don't want to, this is one of the good things about a versatile unit like that, is it's not just a screen.
Yeah.
It's also something that gives your Rhino the ability to advance into objectives, and it also gives your Rhino some relevant shooting.
Yeah.
It sort of fills all of those roles.
Yeah. True.
So I think we'll put it on the table. We'll see how it looks.
Yeah. And it might be the case where we drop the Vindicator, and then with those 190
points,
we pick up get the cultist back, maybe pick up another Rhino. We squeeze in more stuff.
Yeah, you could put some Chosen and some Raptors or something. There's a few different.
Well, two units of Raptors, because Raptors are 90, right?
Yeah.
So that's 180 for 2 units of Raptors.
Yeah. You
might go, let's just do the 2 units of Raptors instead, which to be honest, I already think sounds better, because I know the Vindicator is really good. But
my concern is that we took out the Obliterators, and if you replace that with just screening pieces, I worry the damage might.
Feed, though.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see how we go. But
we'll see. I think we're going to want that Vindicator for damage dealing. I think if we don't have that, and we don't have the Obliterators, and we're relying on mainly Abaddon, 1 unit of Chosen is the damage dealer, and a bit of shooting from Land Raider, I worry that's not enough.
That's fair.
So,
all right, well, let's put it on the table, and then you guys will get to see, because I assume you're going to release this after list sub.
Yeah.
But very close to either before or after Rackon, this will come out, so people will get a chance to see it.
Yeah. And you'll see the final version of the list. We'll do it. On the drive there, we'll talk about it or something like that.
All right.
Yeah. All right, cool. Hope you guys enjoyed that. If you do, let us know.
See you next time.
Yeah. Alrighty, guys. We've just tested the list that we just discussed in the first part of this video. Couple of games later. So we tested the list out, and then we've revised the list further and done another test with a different version, and then we've made some revisions after that as well. So a few different iterations of the list. We want to give you guys the final version, or the most recent version, if you will.
To be fair, I think this is going to be the version I submit. So
yeah, it's a very strong list. We made a few revelations. So we're going to go through what's in the current list and why, based on the conversations that we've already had so far.
Yeah.
So I'll read out the list, and then Jez, you can jump in and make any comments you want. So we've got Abaddon the Despoiler.
Same as before.
Fabius Bile.
Same as before.
Huron Blackheart.
Same as before, but you will note that we've moved him to a unit of Legionnaires.
Yes, we've changed up the configurations of the characters and whatnot. So we've got a Cultists mob as well.
Yep.
And then we've got a unit of 5 Legionaries.
Yes, and we're therefore obviously quite good in a unit of 5, and we just really, it comes down to we wanted to find some points to squeeze more moving parts in. So dropping the Chosen unit to a Legionary unit for Huron to join felt like a decent way to do that, and you'll see later why we've found those points.
Yeah.
But
we also sort of found that unit of 5 Chosen with Huron in it, it wasn't particularly threatening because he doesn't buff the damage output of the unit, and as a result, it wasn't that scary. So we're like, it only has the capacity to bully small things. So a unit of Legionaries does that fine.
Yeah, especially when you're charging onto an objective, and the Legionaries will get
their
rerolls anyway. So, yeah.
Yep, so then we've got a Rhino, we've got the Land Raider, they're all still there, Terminator's still there, the unit of 10 Chosen, which goes with Fabius Bile, that's still there.
That was good, that was a good unit.
Yeah, it was really scary.
We've got the one Forge Fiend with the Ectoplasma. That did really well.
That was really good to the point that in our, like, this reflection, it's worth noting, I think, that the Forge Fiend, it performed so well that it almost kind of justifies a conversation about maybe going to 2. But I think 1 is fine. I think, like, the second one won't be as good as the first one, because the first one comes in from outflank at the perfect time, pops Eternal Hate at the perfect time, and does really well. I think once you add a second one in, you start to lose effectiveness.
Yeah, and you're hoping for 2 perfect scenarios, which is not likely.
So I think I'm really happy with the 1, though.
Yep. Then we've got the 2 units of 5 Noise Marines.
Yeah, I think that's a change. I think our last version didn't have that.
I think we changed and then changed back, perhaps.
Yeah, either way, we've gone with 2. They're for their price, they're really good. And one thing we found that was quite useful is just being able to plink off shots once they come out of the Rhino, because they do come out of the Rhino to jump on objectives, do actions, and do stuff. Having, like, a long-range capacity to force battle shock tests is quite useful.
So we played into World Eaters, because I was running the World Eaters, of course. And Jeremy basically jumped out and tried to shoot one of my units that he knew he was going to kill with something else, but he was hoping to make it so that if I failed battle shock, I wouldn't be able to sticky the objective on death. There's so many strats that you can trigger in, your opponent's turn, that being able to turn them off in your shooting phase is really, really good. So having that extra unit is really good for that. And then the spicy tech that we've got in here is 3 units of 3 Nurglings. So tell us about those, because there's some interesting stuff there.
Yeah, so, like, we wanted to kind of, like, extend our... Like, this was where we left the list last time, where we had the Vindicator. It was like, it's good, but I felt like the list didn't quite have enough screens and enough moving parts. And that became clear very, very early in the game that we were playing. But then we played a game where I had 2 units. We then realized that a 3rd unit was very effective because they deep strike really well.
Yeah, so it unlocks some secondaries. It allows you to take fixed secondaries and take things like teleport homers or behind enemy lines or engage on all fronts. Like, there's a lot of stuff that they can do. And simultaneously, having 3 of them means you can use a couple of them to block out movement or something like that, and still have 1 that you can deep strike.
So there's a few things.
There's lots of stuff you can do.
You can probably tell from just the lighting here, it's night, so it's been quite a few hours we've been playing. But, like, a unit of 3 on the base size that Nurglings are on can screen out an objective from being dropped on by a 3-inch drop.
Yeah,
that's really
which is really good for, like, the GSC have that, Grey Knights have that, all Marines have that with Inceptors. There's tons of armies. Demons have that. There's tons of armies that can drop just outside of 3 inches instead of outside of 9, and those 3 Nurgling bases perfectly screens that out. So what you do is you sticky the objective with your cultists. Your cultists fuck off, and you drop your Nurglings on there, and it's really hard for your opponent to steal that from you.
Yeah, they're also good in that, like, having a unit in deep strike, or maybe 2, but we tried with 1. It's useful because while they don't have an OC value, so they can't do things like extend battle lines or capture no man's land and stuff like that. What they can do is drop down and do a homers. They can take an engage. They can
behind enemy lines if you want to.
So
there's lots of stuff you can do with them.
Times that you're like 35 points for the capacity to score like that.
Yeah.
Your opponent kind of has to screen them, even though they hate it, because they're screening a unit that it's so cheap, it doesn't really do very much. It doesn't. Yeah. It's not that threatening. They also have some utility in the aura of -1 to hit for combat. So if they're with an enemy unit, that enemy unit's -1 to hit in combat. So there are times when they actually act as a force multiplier on a defensive level.
Yeah, because you can charge them into a unit and your Terminators, for example, and then if your opponent is going to go first or interrupt or something to that capacity, you're like, yeah, cool, well, you're -1 to hit because of this 35-point upgrade. You could view it as almost a 35-point upgrade to your Terminator.
Yeah, they're also kind of nice if you have them near, like, if they're setting up in a play where they want to kind of come in and heroic challenge a baton, and there's these Nurglings there that are kind of hidden, they might have to take a -1 to hit on that heroic challenge, which really messes up the maths on some things.
Yeah.
So I found that for 35 points, I know they were only 40 points, I think, before, right?
Yeah, they didn't go down much, but...
Even though it's only 5 points, it's like now they're only 35 points. That's an example of when there's a point where it becomes a little bit too much.
Yeah. It's also worth noting, like, a lot of the time when you're writing lists, it's hard to find 5 points. So even just a unit going down from 5 points, it can be the difference between whether or not you can fit it in the list or not.
Yeah.
So I think the Nurglings are really good, and I think a 35-point unit that you don't give a fuck about it. You don't care if it lives or dies. You don't care if it kills anything or not.
Area denial is another time where if you get a turn 1 area denial and you already have Nurglings near the center, you don't have to, what you would normally want to do to get the extra points is throw something out onto the center that you know is going to die, because your opponent's not going to let you get that center objective. They're going to come and kill it. Even if it's a lone up, they're going to come and kill it. But if you just put Nurglings there, you've scored those points and you've committed such a small amount of points to do something. They're also screening, they're taking up space. Yeah. So that's where the list ends, and we're really happy with where it's finished.
Yeah, I think it's fucking great. I just played into it multiple times. It's really hard to crack. They were close games, you know. Like,
I'm sure you're going to do some videos on your world editors.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've got a few tweaks that I want to make to that list as well. But you know, I think the MSU elements of that army, when you've got multiple Nurglings, you've got multiple Noise Marines, you've got all these cheap units that all provide significant utility. I think that makes for a really cool list.
And it's also worth noting, just before we wrap it up, the Land Raider was really good. The shooting, often turning 4 shots into 5 hits. That was happening a couple of times, where with the exploding 5s, you're able to, with the rerolls, put reliable damage into things. And then even just with a little bit of extra shooting from what it has with its heavy bolter is often enough to knock things over.
Yeah, and the fact that you can make it so it can't be targeted, it was just so annoying. Like I was playing with like Lord of Skulls. We'll do some videos on that shit later. But I was doing like Lord of Skulls, moving up, and I was like, cool, he's only presented me with 1 visible unit. Everything else is MSU units that are hidden. 1 visible unit, and I can't target it. It was fucking annoying. You know, the Terminators are out of line of sight. You know, it was very, very strong. So
we don't know how it's easy to make this, you know, to have this conversation before the event. Obviously, things might not go my way, but I feel like the list is feeling pretty good.
Yeah. And like I said earlier, I like that it's not a huge departure from what you've been playing with before. I think a lot of people make that mistake where they throw the whole fucking kitchen sink out and then start again with all this random crap that they don't have the experience in. So I think you're going to be able to leverage your WTC experience with this list, and I think it's going to be good. So what we'll do is we'll end this video here, and we'll do another video potentially post RatCon where we'll discuss whether or not we're made any sense here and whether or not any of this worked, or whether or not we
play Grey Knights.
or whether or not you play Grey Knights going forward. So all right, awesome. Thanks for tuning in, guys.
See ya.
Alrighty guys, I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, make sure to check out my Patreon where you can get the part 2 from this series early, and we go through writing an army list together in great detail. We talk about the reasons why we consider certain units. We weigh up the pros and cons of different units, and we explain why we would have chosen this one over that one. It's a really interesting little conversation. So if you want to check that out and see how the pros write lists live, then that's a really fantastic way to do it, and you can get early access to that over on the Patreon. So make sure you check that out, and as always, thank you very much for tuning in, watching all the way to the end, liking, subscribing, sharing, commenting, all of that good shit. It is very much appreciated. Cheers.
Look for the blood god.
The Warhammer community suffers from some of the most prohibitively expensive essentials in the world, especially Australian content creators. Every single day, Dean wants to create content, but he can't. Suffering from old, worn-out brushes, expensive model kits, and costly software and equipment, he can't endure much longer. Just look at this dirty paint water. Would you drink this? Would you let your child? Even a small monthly donation can help provide Dean with clean paint water, basic tools for survival, and access to life-saving information and education. So please, follow the links in the description below and find out how you can sponsor a mad cunt like Dean today and end the suffering. Suffering that is cruel, unsustainable, and your fault.